Just 2 days, folks, to Halloween. And as I always say, it's a beautiful day to have a webinar. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to promoting, protecting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and performance-driven marketing industry. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back for yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in roughly 20 minutes. Today, we're joined by two amazing industry friends, including Carey Chase of Modus Direct and Michelle Green of 212 Direct. And together, we'll take a look at the importance of local channels to linear TV marketplace and how performance brands are finding opportunities and optimizing their media investments by including local into their media mix spend. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please use your questions tab located in your control panel. Also, please note, you're welcome to use the questions, ask questions throughout today's conversation, but we'll hold all replies to the end of our discussion this afternoon. Alrighty, folks, with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. Tom Brady calls him the GOAT. He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is Vice President of New Business at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris is the chairperson of the PDMI Brand Response Council and the host of the podcast Men Folk Journey. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you. And for the 126th time, because today is the 126th episode, take it away, my friend. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Johnny. What a fantastic introduction. And Carey and Michelle, welcome to the Take 20. Really excited about this topic. It's a popular topic because, as we know, all channels have had to adapt. And I can speak personally from what I know best, direct mail. Direct mail's had to adapt significantly over the last several years to compete and integrate with digital channels, to develop automation. Well, that's the same for linear. Linear's had to adapt. Right, CTV media channels surge with the tides of technology and consumer preference. Linear's had to adapt, and one way to do that is going towards live sports and news, kind of that natural and exclusive strength of linear. But beyond that, there's another area where linear shines above other marketing channels, and that's local TV. Right, still people are watching local TV. They're looking for their news personalities. They're looking for topics of interest. They might be wanting to find local brands that are advertising locally that they can relate with. So channels are going to rise and fall in terms of prominence. So the question is how these channels adapt. And for linear to go to more local and more community, more relatable, seems like a most natural and successful adaptation. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic. Carey and Michelle, welcome in. Please, why don't you start with an introduction about yourself and your business. Carey, we'll start with you.
Great. Hi, my name is Carey Chase. I'm a media director at Modus Direct. We have a vast amount of experience doing direct response advertising, both local and national, but my career spans over 30 years, and one of the very first things I did was buying, all the local stations, knowing what the different affiliates and call letters were. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and looking forward to talking about all the changes.
Fantastic. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Green, and I'm president and founder of 212 Direct. I started in the business in 1996, working for a direct marketer, and learned so many things about all the different components that go into our performance marketing, and then entered into small agency world, started my agency in 2009. We're lean and mean and boutique, and we stay nimble, and that's one of the keys to our success. And me staying involved with every single client and the adaptability that we've had to find in this crazy changing landscape. Yeah, so almost 30 years for me. And excited to have this conversation. I love the topic because there's a lot of strength still in linear, but specifically local.
Wonderful, and congratulations on the business, both of you. So I'd like to start the same question for both of you. What do you love about local linear? And then also, what frustrates you about it? Michelle, since you light off, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I love its clarity and its control. And that really goes for, honestly, goes for cable and local too, but you can see the lift in sales calls and web engagement immediately. So like the cause and effect of your media buy is certainly more clear than digital, which lives in an attribution world that's often murky and overstated. So linear it's still so strong and provides that trust and scalability and measurable results. Like there's that absolute clarity in the measurement. And in terms of specifically local, linear, I think there's a lot of trust there with sports and news. You get the news lead-ins, you get the live events, you get the sports. I think there's a more creativity and nimbleness and opening up time periods that usually are programming. We find opportunities there. The Monday through Friday inventory avails in and around news. So yeah, I just think there's a little more flexibility and creativity that still exists there. And then plus across the board, just the trust and clarity that you get in attribution.
Fantastic. Carey, what do you love about local linear?
I love the variety that it provides. You have a host of different stations that you're able to look at and see kind of what Michelle was saying, news. The news varies across every station and every market is different. So having an expertise is really helpful in order to navigate that. I love the opportunity to put our clients in positions that they wouldn't be able to do on cable, such as segments and sponsorships that really can connect them to that community. We do a lot of Medicare Advantage, and it's really important to establish that trust. So we've utilized that really efficiently and effectively. I've seen it go from the heyday and the only option, and now it's really interesting. I was just talking to a rep just yesterday about when you have that history and being able to, it's different because so much of the business has gone to digital. So you have that relationship and the stations really trust and they love the direct response business. So it's great to be able to leverage that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, even with our local NBC 39, they would do stories on the Nutcracker. They would do stories when the Hotel Del Coronado opens up the ice skating rink, right?
Yeah.
And so it's super local, and it's a perfect place for advertisers to really connect with the community because it ties that content in and that local storytelling with that business. So we love that about it. What are some things, though, however, that, because we have to be honest on the Take 20, what are some things that frustrates you about local TV, and then how do you address those frustrations? Michelle, we'll start with you.
Honestly, what frustrates me about it is not necessarily the channel or the medium itself. I think it's the narrative around it for me, that it's not relevant anymore, that it's outdated. And I think that is simply not true. Mm-hmm. Because of the clarity and the data that you get. It's always stronger when you have clarity around it. It's linear still clearly, and local linear still a big major driver of engagement, and it works beautifully with all the other touch points.
Excellent. Carey, what do you think?
From a media standpoint, being on boots on the ground, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's not like digital where you're able to, kind of come together a plan and bing, bang, boom, and it's done. I have to call or, email 15 stations in every market and then and having relationships. So you really have to invest in it. You have to have people that know each market, and, it's kind of dying out in a way to what Michelle is, people don't value it, and it should be valued because it's still very much part of it. Over the air has continued to grow. It's grown year over year about 20%. So people that are still cord cutters, and we'll get to this, are still getting it over the air kind of the old-fashioned way through not antennas on the TV on the top of their house, but little antennas that are digitally connected. And so you still have that audience. So it's very valuable to our clients, but you still have to talk to every rep, and with all the technology that we've grown up with and have is able to benefit our business, it's still very kind of old-fashioned in that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds to me, you know, talked about, Michelle, the clarity and the control that you get, the real cause and effect, that lift, that sense of attribution that happens. Carey, you talked about the variety where you got different markets and stations that you can really customize advertising to, but it does take work. So it seems to me like the niche providers, if you understand local, you can really take advantage of its strength and power. You just have to know it to do it. Is that fair?
Yes. You know, I love what Carey said. Can I add one more thing on the frustration?
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, there's more preemptions. It moves more, and then there's more keystrokes, and it definitely costs more money for us as agencies to carry local broadcasts, but as more than ever, it's worth it right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
still so much power.
Yeah, I love it that there's a little bit more effort, but there's a little bit more payoff. I think that's fantastic. Carey, I'd like to ask about when you see local linear, and you mentioned the call stations and the like, and a little bit of hoof work to make this happen. Where do you recommend it as a great fit marketing channel for your clients? What industries, what kind of clients are a perfect fit for local linear?
It really varies. We do a lot of Medicare Advantage, so that's absolutely perfect because a lot of Medicare, outside of the big players like United Healthcare and Humana, like even the Blues are very specific, and it gets down to county level. So local broadcast matches perfectly. We also have done tort or personal injury. You know, the attorney law end of is very much a local business, even though there are again some larger aggregators. It's still very much, again, that trust that you want with both healthcare, with something with law, and then retail is great. We've done some direct consumer, and as they continue to scale their business and maybe they go into brick and mortar, this is always great that we see, and kind of what Michelle was saying, that you can see that attribution immediately when we start to do local tests. So it's one of those things that is also great for, you can work it, it's a complement. One, you can do national and you can do local to build up certain businesses and achieve certain specific localized goals.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like adding that combination. Michelle, I want to ask you about a little bit about 212. It's interesting that you have, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, or just elaborate on it, you have a cost per action advertising model. It seems to me like when you had mentioned about this lift and engagement with local linear, that kind of advertising model is a perfect fit for this channel. Am I reading that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm CPA or PI, as we used to call it, maybe still call it in linear. It's been around for a long time. It's a relevant and boosting component of any campaign. But honestly, what excites me now is that there's a lot of traction in it in the digital space now. I mean, we've built this into our DNA and we've been doing it forever. And it's a no-brainer because we're creating, paying for engagement based on a set number versus the risk that you always take with the media, even though we're optimizing and we're highly accountable. But I think the partnership aspect of it is maybe the biggest strength because the seller, the agency, the client are all on board with the same goal and constantly working to get there. It has to work for everybody in order for it to make sense, even on the seller side. So yeah, it's always going to be a really big, important component of every campaign, and it obviously helps boost the overall. Been around in linear for a long time. I know we're always searching for more, but it's exciting that we're doing it in the digital space too. So
that's fantastic. One question that I would have that some people talk about with linear is they say, oh, linear is for an older demographic, especially, you know, for local linear. Do you think that that's even more so true, or is that a misnomer and a myth? Carey, we'll start with you.
You know, there is some truth to that. I mean, it definitely is a bit older. We do great with the Medicare Advantage, but I do think that as people have come to find that, you know, with subscription fatigue, I do sense that it's coming back, and it's so easy to, again, get those over-the-air antennas. And so what I see is that a lot of the stations, the smart ones, are doing they'll have apps, and they have this nice bridge between their linear over-the-air broadcast, and then some of the things that they're doing digitally. But you see, but both of them are, you can get it either way. So I think that there is an opportunity there to kind of use both, but programming wise with news, it's 35 plus, but it's not 65 plus. So when you, and the proof is in the pudding, when you do tests and you can show that demonstrate that there is an audience across a broader demographic, then clients start to listen.
Roger, that makes sense to me. Michelle, I guess I'll ask you, you have such an incredible array of clients under your belt, and congratulations on that. From them, how have you learned to adapt to their changing expectations, and how are you able to kind of fit in to say, well, here's where local's really going to help you, even if you haven't thought about it? I think earlier in the show you said, yeah, it kind of gets a bad rap, and it shouldn't, right? It actually can be talked about with its strengths. How do you talk about the strength of local linear with your clients?
Well, I mean, the evolution part of it that you brought up, I think we've, I mean, and this is going to resonate with everybody probably on listening right now, but we've had to evolve from being media buyers to performance partners in blending linear and streaming strategies. And I'll share with you, I'm working with a client right now that's in the precious metal space, and they're big, and they've primarily been in the digital space. They haven't ever done linear, and they are saying we want a new audience, and they don't really realize. I mean, they're thinking, oh, in certain areas of linear it's going to be younger, and it isn't necessarily. We know linear tends to skew older, but if they went into sports or something like that, they will still get that younger audience. So regardless, in this case, it's kind of exciting. Instead of trying to take my current clients over to digital, which we're doing, we're getting to educate them about the linear space, which is brand new to them. And they're excited about it because they're like, we want a brand new lead. So I mean, it still is just so powerful. I think the biggest thing is education. I think we're doing a lot more education and a lot more maybe sort of like creating safety for them in terms of getting them to come over to a brand new medium. And a lot of that is through maybe some offerings that deliver a CPA component or something like that. So we just stay nimble. It's not a template for us. Every one of our clients is customized, and we got to stay nimble and be able to pivot quickly.
I love it. So I think that's fantastic, because you have all these digital native businesses and brands that have never tried another channel. Their digital might be tapped out. Their expertise with their team is so local, it's so bounded by just digital understanding, that coming to agencies like yourself to get better access to the power of linear TV, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I've got a thought leadership question for both of you ladies. There's a new media world now. There's been a lot of conversation about TikTok and YouTube, shorts, about not just cord cutters, but a new generation of cord nevers. Local is also on variety of social media channels and digital channels too. All of my local TV channels have their own website, they've got their own feed. So it's not necessarily, I'm not reaching them only by TV, they're getting to me through digital means. What are the biggest ways in which local linear has to adapt or change to fit into this new expectation with these new kind of media channels? Carey, we'll start with you.
I kind of touched on it just before about the apps. I've seen a local station here in Chicago, WGN, that does this very well. They've done it in two ways. They have the app that you can kind of watch reruns. They have the #1 morning news show in Chicago, and they take, it's kind of been the formula for KTLA in Los Angeles, and it's a little irreverent, and they do spend, it's like 6 hours. So they have a lot of time that they can do little bits and little segments, and those are definitely repurposed on socials. And that has really garnered a very strong community. It's both community as well as fun, and then you have the news. And I think they do that really well. And I've noticed recently that they are not only programming later in the day, because this is a situation where, with syndicated programming, maybe falling out of favor, there's just not as much, that they are coming up with their own content, both digitally on apps, but also on the broadcast channel. So I think that repurposes things from their morning show. So seeing that kind of that content delivery is great, because then it allows, again, it provides opportunity for some of our clients to sponsor some of these. You can do a marathon, you can do a variety of things that are creative across a whole bunch of stations, not only have the independents, but also across some of the top affiliates. So I think that the same way that you're seeing it, really it's the content and seeing what matches best for your clients and trying to leverage that and trying to be creative from a media standpoint.
That's cool. That's a fantastic example. I love that shift where the onus is actually on the local linear station to evolve more content to be a magnet for folks
Exactly.
to clue them in. That's great. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously the local linear needs to play to their unique strengths, which we've established. Is there's trust there, and then the clear data that you get from it. But I think what they need to do is be able to mirror the digital flexibility. And one of the things that I thought of actually just now is that I think everyone has to be engaged in this, and obviously the client has to be on board with it, but more creative, more targeted creative, which is what we utilize in digital. And we're so used to that broad sweep in linear where you just, you run one creative, even a version for a year at a time. So I think more targeted creative would be a big help to kind of mirror the flexibility that that digital offers.
I love it. That's fantastic, because what it does is it says there's content, there's platform, there's creative, there are ways in which local linear TV can learn from what digital is doing, but still use its own unique strength and still lean into its sense of trust, the sense of community connection that other digital media just can't have, because it's either national or agnostic or soulless, right? It doesn't come from that local place. That was marvelous. Well, we are already at 11:25. Johnny, do we have some questions from our audience?
First of all, great job, gang. And yes, we do have some questions. We have a very active and excited audience. So let me go through a couple of these with you guys. The first one says, would you recommend using local linear to test new campaigns, or is it just too risky due to geographical variances? And basically what they're getting at is wondering if local linear is recommended to determine the success or failure of a new campaign.
I mean, I think that I was going to jump in. I think it's still worthy of a test. It depends. It would depend on the product, essentially, and what your goals are as a campaign. By and large, if there is any local element that you want to take, if you can afford, and what the budgets are too. It's one station. If it's a national brand, national cable may be a better way to do testing. However, if we have clients that there is a local focus, in which case then I think that it would make sense. There are markets that tend to do well, that if you have the experience, you can kind of steer them into what markets make the most sense to build a hybrid media plan, which we have done at Modus in the past. So I think it's possible, but it would need to, it's not something that's just yes or no answer.
It makes sense. It sounds like it's contingent upon every individual case based on all the elements of the campaign.
I would, if I can chime in, I would typically, if it's a campaign that doesn't need to be geo-targeted for whatever reasons, like you mentioned, Carey, the tort law attorneys, sometimes it's the case in healthcare, but if it's just an across-the-board product or service, I typically will always try to steer them towards national cable because it's so efficient. So in a testing scenario, you can get so much more. It's not inefficient once you roll out, but I think in testing, if it is an across the board something that doesn't have to run in individual markets, that's what I would lean towards.
Great feedback. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Let's try this question. How can small or mid-sized brands compete on local TV without breaking the budget? Or can they compete on local TV without breaking the budget?
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I mean, I definitely think they can. I mean, there's access to still a lot of inventory out there and more day parts than national cable if you're comparing it to that. And there's efficiencies there. I would definitely say without breaking the bank. I mean, market to market, there's a lot of creativity that you can garner from it. And yeah, I think you can still be efficient and successful if you're not a large brand.
Yep. I've worked with lots of small to mid-sized brands on local, and you have DigiNets as well, which are great because those are extremely efficient. Usually the rates, even from some of the larger DMAs, are under $100 for 30s, 50s. So there's definitely ways and strategies that you can use to look at the local market and make it successful.
Cool. Well, to build up that question of smaller and mid-sized brands competing in local TV, are there sweet spots on local TV around certain types of content or certain types of day part that do consistently deliver results or are more productive for these size companies? Or for any campaign in general, really? Without giving out the family secret.
Well, I brought it up earlier, but I would just say again, I mean, you can get into those in and around news, which is great. And in many markets, it's affordable. There's more weekday avails to kind of like aggregate the weekend and the weekend, the weekday and the weekend. I mean, you've got NFL, you've got like the lead-ins that bump up against those. So yeah, that would be like, I think still what makes it stand out.
You know, I think there's always an opportunity, you know, again, it really kind of, it's hard to say something that's a blanket statement just because we always look at, you know, the goals and what, there's so many little factors that can kind of impact what the different sweet spots are for a variety of different clients. So, but I'm always really confident that we can try to find that there's enough variety within this space to be able to make a campaign be successful, or at least to learn from it and then move on from there.
Thank you for sharing, you two. It sounds like the power of live is an important thing in local TV, you know, live news, live sports, so on and so forth, which is great. Let's do one more together. Are there common mistakes or pitfalls that performance brands face when they allocate budget to local TV, especially if they don't have a history of advertising in local? Like, what are some common mistakes they kind of bump up against?
I think the biggest mistake, especially for a new marketer, is looking at it. Well, I think it's important, especially if it's a direct consumer type product, DR. You know, looking at impressions and kind of thinking about those high reach areas where we find efficiencies and we take different strategies that are different from brands. So that is some of the, you know, it's a lot of education, as Michelle had indicated, into breaking some of these norms. And so if you go in kind of with this mindset, and it can be very different from digital, just in terms of even looking at things from an impression standpoint. So I think is allowing yourself to work with people that have the expertise and being able to trust what those recommendations are and hear the explanations, and just kind of going in with a foregone conclusion or some assumptions is something that can be problematic down the road.
Agree. I'd say, I mean, I think that like their ability to ride the wave, it needs to be a little bit greater, the clients, because depending on, I mean, you could buy a bigger avail and get like a fire sale in New York or Detroit, and you've got a $7,000 airing, and you know it's going to pay out if you have the history on it. But we have a lot of smaller media that we run in packages that need frequency. Like you really need, in a lot of these cases, due to the rate and the geo-targeted effects, you're going to need the frequency. And maybe one week it doesn't pay out, but maybe the following week it's triple what your KPI is. So I think that that's one factor. It's just that to be able to ride the wave and look at the frequency and the education, like you mentioned, Carey. I agree. Just kind of stick with it. And
it seems to me that especially if there's someone who isn't used to local linear, that there has to be a little bit of patience and trust in agencies like yourselves, just to say, we're just going to go through this journey. Don't freak out and don't panic. This is the plan and this is how it's paid off. And I guess to be guided by your expertise.
Yes, there's definitely, trends and times that you kind of counsel, and yet every week you're kind of surprised, which is why the experience really matters, because sometimes it's like, oh, best laid plans, sometimes it works to the positive and things are much better than what you expected, and then sometimes you're in the process of learning and trying to figure out why it didn't work as you expected. So always kind of being inquisitive, and because things are changing, even though this is such an established channel, there, as Chris, as you had indicated, there are things that are changing every day as they try to compete against this changing environment. So it really does impact the media, and you just have to be experienced enough to really, and not have the hubris to think that you know everything, because the winds are always changing.
truth.
Alrighty, well said, everyone. Well said. I'm going to come back in and join you all. And here I am, just like magic. Phenomenal session, Chris, Carey, Michelle. Great conversation today. You guys are all masters of your craft. There's no doubt about it. So thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience and all the knowledge that you have on local TV with us. It was great. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join us for our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, which is hosted on November 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And November 12th means that we're ending the year soon. We're almost at Thanksgiving now. Halloween's going to be in the rearview window. We're going to be at Thanksgiving, facing the holidays, the new year, and we'll be kicking it off again in January. And speaking of the new year in January, I'd like to remind you all that the PDMI Spring Conference, PDMI East, is scheduled for April 13th to 15th in Miami at the beautiful Eden Rock Hotel. Just imagine yourself, toes in the sand, warm water on your feet, beautiful scenes, and hanging out with all your closest friends in the industry, talking shop. Nothing better than that. To get your attendee badges and your hotel rooms, please visit thepdmi.com. That's thepdmi.com. And finally, and last but not least, class is in session, folks. I'd like to encourage you to check out the all-new PDMI University with 10 new powerful courses. This online and on-demand program is designed to help you elevate your game. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks again to Michelle, Carey, and Chris. Everyone have a great 2 weeks, and we'll see you on November 12th. Take care.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.